All right, so you're gearing up for that IELTS speaking exam, huh? The one that can like open doors to universities and jobs all over the world.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Big one for sure.
Wow.
Well, you're in luck because we've got some fantastic notes here. And we're going deep into this guide from IELTS Advantage called IELTS Speaking, How to Get Band 8 or 9.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
It really is. We're going to try to unpack the secrets to not just passing, but absolutely crushing this thing.
Exactly. Not just getting by, but like really impressing them.
Totally. And for anyone out there who might be thinking, hold on, what even is IELTS? It's like the gold standard test for English proficiency, especially if you're thinking about studying or working in an English-speaking country. You know,
Right. If you want to prove you've got the skills.
exactly. And the speaking section. Well, that's where you can really let your personality and communication skills shine.
Yeah, it's your chance to show them you can actually use the language, you
Yeah.
know? Not just like do grammar exercises.
Yeah, for real. It's interesting because some people think the IELTS speaking test is all about like showing off fancy vocabulary or delivering these perfectly memorized speeches.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that too.
But that's actually the opposite of what you want to do.
Totally. It's going to hurt you more than it helps you.
It really will.
Hmm.
This guide emphasizes that the IELTS is all about natural, authentic communication, just like you'd have in a real-world situation, you know?
Right, like you're talking to a friend or colleague.
Exactly. And I remember when I was first learning a new language, I used to get so tripped up trying to sound smart
Oh, tell me about it.
that I would just lose track of the conversation entirely.
Yeah, you get so focused on the form that you lose the meaning.
Exactly. And that's what this guide warns against. It's all about connection and expressing yourself clearly.
It is. And think about it. If you were chatting with a friend in English, would you be stressing about using the most complex grammar or like dropping these obscure idioms?
No way.
Probably not.
You'd be focused on like connecting and sharing your thoughts and just expressing yourself.
Yeah, being yourself, basically.
Being yourself,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's the mindset you want to bring to the IELTS speaking exam.
For sure. And speaking of mindset, this guide is full of amazing tips for success. But first, let's break down the format. You'll have 3 parts. The first one is a friendly chat about everyday topics.
Okay.
Then you get a cue card and have to give a short presentation.
Like a little mini speech.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, there's a more in-depth discussion on a specific theme.
Okay, so it gets progressively more challenging.
Exactly. And throughout all of that, they're assessing your pronunciation, fluency, grammar, and vocabulary. Basically, how well you can communicate in English across different scenarios.
Gotcha. So they're really trying to see how well-rounded you are.
Yeah, they want to see the whole picture. And one of the most valuable tips in this guide, in my opinion, is the emphasis on speaking English every single day. It sounds simple, but it's so powerful.
You know, I was just about to say, I love how they break it down to the little bit everyday approach.
Oh, it's so key.
It's so much more realistic for busy people.
Yeah,
You know, it's like instead of cramming for a test, you're building a habit.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the amount of time you spend speaking, but the consistency. You know, it's like working out a muscle. The more you use English, the stronger your fluency becomes.
That's a great analogy.
And that fluency is directly linked to confidence, which is key for feeling relaxed and natural during the test.
So true. The more comfortable you are, the better you'll perform.
Absolutely.
And speaking of feeling confident, the guide has this tip about asking for clarification. That just blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they're giving you permission to say, hold on, I don't quite get what you mean.
It seems so counterintuitive, right?
It really does.
But it makes so much sense. You know, it's not a sign of weakness.
Right.
It shows you're actively listening and like engaged in the conversation.
Totally.
And honestly, if you try to like bluff your way through a question you don't understand, you're more likely to make mistakes and lose your flow.
I get that completely. Sometimes you just need a little nudge to get back on track.
Right.
And speaking of nudges, the guide has this really interesting tip about doing a 24-hour English warm-up before the test.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
I love this tip. It's all about priming your brain for peak performance.
Yeah.
You know, think about it. Like if you were an athlete getting ready for a big game, wouldn't you want to warm up your muscles and get in the zone?
Oh, for sure.
Well, it's the same idea with language.
Right.
By surrounding yourself with English, listening to podcasts, reading articles, chatting with friends, you're basically telling your brain, hey, we're going to be using English a lot tomorrow, so get ready.
I've actually tried this before, a big presentation.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to say, it really makes a difference. I felt so much more confident and articulate.
It works. And it's not just about feeling confident, it's also about reducing anxiety and those like pesky nerves that can throw us off our game.
Yeah, those nerves can be a killer.
The more comfortable you are with the language, the less likely you are to freeze up or overthink things during the test.
Makes sense. It's like you're creating a safe space for yourself to just be present and communicate effectively.
Exactly. And speaking of communicating effectively, the guide stresses the importance of giving full answers.
Right. It can be tempting to just say yes or no when you're feeling nervous.
Oh, yeah, especially under pressure.
But those short answers don't really give the examiner enough information to assess your English skills.
Exactly. They want to hear you elaborate, explain your reasoning, provide examples. It's your chance to really showcase what you know.
Right. It's like painting a picture with words.
I like that.
You want to give the examiner a rich and detailed understanding of your thoughts and experiences.
Yeah, you want to show depth.
And sometimes that means correcting yourself if you make a mistake.
Which, by the way, is totally okay.
Totally.
And even encouraged in the guide.
Really?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite tips because it goes against that common misconception that mistakes are the enemy.
Oh, yeah, we're so afraid of making mistakes.
But in reality, correcting yourself demonstrates self-awareness and a strong command of the language.
It's like saying, hey, I caught that little slip up and I know how to fix it.
Exactly. It shows you're not just passively speaking, but actively thinking about the language and how to use it accurately.
It's like having an internal editor who's always on duty.
I love that analogy. And this ties back to the importance of practicing effectively.
Oh, absolutely. Practice makes perfect, as they say.
Well, in this case, perfect practice makes perfect.
Right.
The guide emphasizes reflective practice, which means recording yourself and then listening back to identify areas for improvement.
Oh, man, that can be painful.
It can be a little cringy at first, but it's so valuable.
Yeah, it's like watching yourself on video. It's always a little awkward.
But you can hear your strengths, your weaknesses, and those little quirks that you might not even realize you have.
Right. It's like having an instant replay of your performance.
Exactly. And then armed with that knowledge, you can tailor your practice to address those specific areas.
Makes sense. So you're not just practicing randomly, you're practicing with purpose.
Exactly. And to help with that, the guide even provides links to real practice questions from the British Council,
Ah, that's awesome.
organized by each part of the test. It's like having a personalized training program.
So helpful. Now let's talk about part 1 of the speaking test, which focuses on personal topics.
All right, let's dive in.
I know a lot of people get stressed about sounding too rehearsed or robotic in this section.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into that trap.
It is. The guide tackles this head on, explaining that it's not about memorizing answers word for word. It's about familiarizing yourself with common themes and practicing how you'd respond naturally.
Right. It's about being prepared but not scripted.
And it's reassuring to know that the examiner isn't expecting you to deliver a perfectly polished speech. They just want to hear you speak confidently and fluently about things that are familiar to you.
Yeah, they want to see your personality shine through.
Exactly. So just relax, be yourself, and let your natural communication skills take over.
And to help you prepare, the guide includes a link to sample questions and answers for part 1. It's like having a sneak peek into the types of topics you might be asked about.
That's so useful. Then there's part 2, the long turn, where you get a cue card and have to speak for a couple of minutes.
Okay, the dreaded long turn.
I remember feeling a bit intimidated by this part when I took the IELTS.
It can be daunting for sure.
But the guide has this fantastic strategy for structuring your response. They break it down into clear steps along with a sample answer that shows you how to put it all together. It's like having a roadmap to guide you through the presentation.
Yeah, having that structure can really take the pressure off.
It does. It allows you to focus on delivering your ideas clearly and confidently without worrying about getting lost or running out of things to say.
Exactly. And then there's part 3, the discussion, which delves into more abstract topics and requires you to think critically and express your opinions.
Okay, so this is where it gets really challenging.
It can be, but it's also your chance to really shine, show off your ability to engage in complex discussions.
This is where the guide's resources on common part 3 questions and avoiding common mistakes come in handy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about being prepared for the unexpected. The guide helps you anticipate the types of questions you might encounter and provides strategies for navigating those complex discussions effectively.
That preparation can make all the difference in feeling confident and expressing yourself clearly. It's like having a secret weapon in your back pocket.
For sure. Now let's debunk some common myths about vocabulary because I know a lot of people think they need to cram in as many big words as possible to get a high score.
Oh yeah, the bigger the word, the better, right?
Well, not quite.
Yeah, I remember when I was prepping for language exams, I'd always try to shoehorn in the fanciest words I could find.
Oh, yeah.
thinking you would impress the examiners.
It's a common misconception.
It is.
But you know what this guide emphasizes? Clarity trumps complexity every time.
Really?
Yeah, using a big word incorrectly is far worse than using a simpler word accurately and effectively.
Right. It's about choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly.
Vocabulary is meant to enhance your message, not obscure it.
For sure.
I was actually surprised to see the guide even cautioning against overusing idioms.
Yeah, that's interesting, right?
It is.
Because while idioms can add color to your language, they can also sound unnatural or confusing if used inappropriately.
Right.
You know, the examiner wants to see that you can communicate effectively in a variety of ways, not just rely on memorized phrases.
It's about showing your genuine grasp of the language.
Exactly.
Speaking of genuineness, let's talk about pronunciation and fluency.
Okay, sure.
The guide states that pronunciation is perhaps the most important skill because clear speech equals clear understanding.
It's true. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If the examiner can't understand what you're saying, all the fancy vocabulary and grammar in the world won't matter.
Right. It's like the foundation.
It is.
Yeah, bro.
And I think it's incredibly reassuring that the guide debunks the myth that you need a perfect British accent.
Oh, yeah. So many people stress about their accent.
I know. It's great that the guide emphasizes that what matters most is clarity.
For sure. As long as your pronunciation is clear and easy to understand, your accent is part of your unique voice and actually adds to the richness of the conversation.
Totally. And fluency, of course, is closely tied to practice and confidence.
Absolutely.
The more you practice, the smoother your speech becomes and the more confident you feel expressing yourself.
It becomes a virtuous cycle.
It does. And it all comes back to that core message of the guide. Effective communication is the key.
It is. The examiners are looking for someone who can engage in a natural, dynamic conversation, not just deliver a rehearsed performance.
Right. They want to see you shine.
They do.
Yeah.
And the guide provides so many extra resources to help you do just that.
Like what?
Well, there are links for dealing with unfamiliar topics, strategies for asking questions effectively, even a whole FAQ section for quick answers to common concerns.
So they've really thought of everything.
They really have.
Yeah.
To empower you to walk into that exam room feeling confident and prepared.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So to wrap things up, it's not just about learning English. It's about learning how to show your English skills in the specific context of the IELTS speaking exam.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And it's about being adaptable, engaging with the examiner as a person, and showcasing your unique voice and experiences.
Well, absolutely.
And here's a final thought for you to ponder. What if you approached the IELTS speaking test not as a test at all, but as a conversation with someone genuinely interested in your perspectives? How would that change your preparation and your mindset going in?
That's an interesting question. It's a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of seeing the examiner as a judge, you see them as a fellow human being, curious to learn about your world.
Exactly. And we encourage you to dive into the IELTS Advantage Guide and explore all the fantastic resources it offers.
There's so much good stuff in there.
And remember, with the right preparation and a confident mindset, you can absolutely rock that IELTS speaking test.
You got this.